3, 2, and 1. All right, guys, here we are again. It's another Q&A session with one of the coaches that I bring in, and probably a lot of you recognize this one. This is Courtney Van Beers, the resident athletic therapist that we drag in from time to time, and she tolerates my nonsense, and I appreciate that. Hey, Courts, what's up?
Not much, pretty much just doing what everyone else is doing.
Exciting.
Sleeping in, relaxing, and trying to pivot with our recent shutdown. But it's a good chance to work on everything that you don't do when you're seeing clients and staying busy.
Yeah, the back end stuff. Yeah. So we have an update on your current work status. So why don't you give us a little bit of info on that?
Yeah, so as much as this was a really hard year, it was also a really good year for me. The original shutdown from March to June here in Alberta gave me a lot of time to think, about my career, where I thought my path was going and what was making me happy, what wasn't making me happy. And I ended up deciding to become self-employed and start my own private practice, my own mobile therapy business. So that's been super exciting, and I'm super proud of everything that I'm doing, and I'm super excited and inspired. It's been a while since I've had that motivation to build something and try a whole bunch of new things. So as much as we all had to do that with COVID, it kind of just all lined up for me, kind of lined up for me when I was ready to do those things too. So started my own mobile therapy business called CVB Wellness Services. I am based out of Calgary, but that doesn't mean I can't help people elsewhere too. What I'm doing is I have a traveling treatment table, and I'm going right to people's houses to do injury assessments, treatments, and craniosacral therapy. I figured both with what I love doing, I like driving, and didn't like so much being in one treatment room all the time. It's the perfect mix of getting to drive around, see people at their homes. That means my workplace changes every hour, which is actually super cool, and it doesn't feel like work at all. So I just pack up my stuff, I come to the person's house, and it's been great. It's a ton of fun. I'm getting really good results with my clients because they're not rushing around. They're not stressed about coming into a clinic or a gym where it's really busy. There's lots of people in and out, which can be, a little scary for some people right now, going into those bigger places, going into somewhere where they know there's lots of people in and out. So coming to their houses, I just clean everything. I come in, we all wear masks and do our thing.
That's awesome. Super happy that you've gone out on your own, and it's, in my opinion, a long time overdue, but that's just one man's opinion.
Yes and no. I could have done it a long time ago, but I mean, there's a lot of perks to being an employee, and it gave me the time to figure out who I was and what my style was and what my niche was. I think anyone, even in the personal training realm or any of the therapies, you don't build your niche right away, and you kind of have to have the experience of helping a ton of people using a whole bunch of different modalities, a whole bunch of programming styles to figure out what your thing is. So I learned so much, and I am the therapist I am today because of what I did the last 7 years working at the gym, right? Yeah. Working at the gym led me to being friends with you, and then you became my coach in powerlifting. And so I learned a lot of stuff through that too. So I'm super grateful for what I did, and I feel now I'm ready because I have the skills, but I also have my niche, which kind of gives me my path, which will still wind a lot depending on what I decide to learn and work on. But
that's part of the fun.
Yeah, at least I have that starting point in my business.
Yeah. I always find it so interesting when we get new trainers at the gym, they're like, oh, I want to specialize in this and this and this. And I'm like, you've been doing this for like 6 months. You have no idea what you're going to specialize in. You're going to be exposed to so many different methodologies, programs, systems, training styles, implementation, research, just sheer experience. You don't have a clue. And honestly, like I'm still honing my style every day. And I've been doing it for 13 or 14 years now. I don't even know. It's got to be almost 14 years professionally. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that never changes. You just keep learning and growing and just adapting.
Yeah. Well, anytime you're trying to get into a profession, I was actually just talking with a professor from MRU yesterday about the journey of my business and what I was doing as an athletic therapist and how it differed from what I thought I would be doing. So my whole goal is to become a certified therapist. And when I was in high school, when I was in the program, I was like, yeah, I'm going to work hockey and I'm going to make my way up the chain and I'm going to work NHL. And then actually going through the program and then working with sports teams and kids teams and everything, I just learned that is not where I was meant to be. It was fun, don't get me wrong, like getting to travel
Yeah.
and getting to know the athletes and having that kind of camaraderie of being part of a team was so great. But there's a flip side to that. You're in charge of every situation that happens, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
If it's a torn muscle, pretty straightforward, but it could be something medical, something crazy could happen on the court or the ice, and you're in charge of that. And the traveling can also be a hindrance because then you're away from home. And the practices can be 6 a.m., 5 p.m., 10 p.m. Like it's just so all over the place. And some people are more the adrenaline junkies and they like the toss up of anything can happen. They love that.
Mm.
But even though I thought that's what I was going to do with my life, learned that's not where I was meant to be. And then I learned I was meant to be on the clinical side, we call it, assessing injuries, doing treatments, manual therapy, and then helping the person get better long term. And then I had no idea I was going to delve into the exercise world, and I loved it. If when I first certified, you would ask me if I would be working in a gym, doing exercise programming, helping people, I would have thought you were crazy because when I was in school, I avoided exercise programming like the plague. I was like, just let me release the muscles. Just let me release the muscles. It'll be good. And then I learned it by going through it, working at the gym. And now that's what I mean when I say I'm such a better therapist for it, because I'm so more well-grounded. And now because I have the basics or more than the basics in all of that, it's so much easier to know which path to take and where your specialty lies. I still love helping people with exercise, but I don't want to be limited to that, right? I love the injury assessment. I love the puzzle that people's issues end up being, right? Some injuries, some pain is really straightforward, but a lot of it's not. And
Yeah.
you only know that by assessing it, looking at the person's movement, feeling the tissues, and treating it like a puzzle. Find all the pieces, put it together, give the person the right things to work on. You as a therapist can work on the things that they can't work on themselves. And it gives such good results when you have such a well-rounded approach.
Yeah. It's always interesting, like because you come from different specialties. Like I see some people that come from like say an athletic therapy background, a conditioning background, a strength background, and we all start to study different things. Like especially the gym we worked at, we all started to study similar stuff from each other. Like I did a bunch of rehab that you taught me. Now I don't want to do rehab all the time and that stuff, but I still have the ability to do it
Yeah.
fairly well. And same for you. You don't want to do exercise programming all the time, but you can still do it fairly well. But it's not our specialty. It's just we understand the concepts and then we apply the concepts to our own craft.
Big time. And you're right, like I can still do all the programming. I'm not doing it every day anymore, but it so helps me with my clients, right? It could be someone who's never done exercise and now I know how to get them doing simple things for their health and teach it to them. And then maybe they'll want to do more exercise. That's great. Then I have the next step for them. Or I can see the clients of trainers and coaches from a bunch of different, I call them genres, kind of like in music. You guys all have different genres that you're in. And now I can ask the person, like, hey, what are you working on? What's your programming like?
Mhm.
Oh, that's a great program for you, but I want you to tweak this exercise because of this injury. Or, oh, that's a big strength program, but I'd really like you to do a few more mobility things. You can even just do them in your warm up and it'll help you injury and it'll help with whatever you're working on. Because I either learned about it through working with clients or I did it myself in the powerlifting. So it's way easier also to help each person, whether they're not exercising to exercising regularly, either on their own at a gym or with a trainer or a team, to the person who's competing.
Yeah.
It's super neat. Super neat.
Do you think we're going to see more overlap from like athletic therapists looking more in exercise programming and vice versa? We see coaches going into more like rehab studies and stuff like that, and nutrition and all the other stuff? Or do you think it's just going to be, this is what I do, I'm not going to leave this area and this is how it's going to go? Because I have my opinion. I think you probably have roughly the same one.
Yeah. I hope there's more overlap, but there's also different facets to that. So I think everyone is becoming more broad. And I think you have the same thing too, is you want as many tools as you can.
Yeah.
So that you have the tools at the right time in the right place. You'll specialize into some, obviously, but you should have knowledge in others. Then you can help your clientele, your friends, your family, whoever it ends up being, as broadly as possible. But you also need to know when it's time to refer to the person that has that specialty, right?
I think it's important that you can actually communicate with the other person.
Yeah.
Like, I study rehab and I know this person has a hamstring issue. I know what I shouldn't do, but I'll probably send them to you, that we can have a conversation. Whereas if I was just focusing on the strength portion of this and nothing else, and not focusing on anything in the rehab, we won't be able to talk the same language and come to a common ground.
Yeah. And it's so great because, if someone, has tight hamstring, it's affecting their mobility and their ability to get into the positions you need for the exercises. Yeah, the mobility. If it's sore, you know how to work with it. You know what exercises to give, or if they're having problems with this hamstring exercise, you can modify it given the other one. Now, if those adjustments and the activation, the strengthening, the mobility isn't working and there's still a problem, you're like, there's something else here. Why don't you get it assessed?
Mhm.
Same with me. It's like, my client maybe progress, or I get someone who's going into the strength world. I can give them the tidbits. I can make sure that their form's good. I can give them some easy programming, but at some point, they're going to need someone who's way better than me at programming and working at actually getting up there in the strength. So that referral is going to go back and forth.
Yeah, and I think that's where it's going slowly. I think more coaches are understanding that. Well, especially on my end, like, I think more coaches, like strength coaches, are like, I have to learn about nutrition. I have to learn about, conditioning and energy systems. I have to learn about X, Y, Z, because you may have a specialty, but all those other little, where someone else's specialties, all those other niches and things all interlock together. They all work together. And if they don't, just because you can't squat heavy enough today doesn't mean the program doesn't work. It could be because you're sleeping 2 hours a night and you're eating like dog shit. It's just, I think you have to understand, and you have to understand more. And the more you understand, the more you start looking at things differently. And that's what I've learned in the last probably 14, 15 years of doing this, is that there's no one answer to any problem.
Yeah.
There's usually a few variances of situations that lead to several answers, and you just got to figure out which one works the best.
Yeah. And this gets into the whole conversation of, no matter what your goals are, it is multifaceted. I really like the pie chart analogy. It's used with everything, right? But it's like, you're trying to get strong. So some people think their whole pie chart, the whole way to get there is to do strength training.
Yeah.
And if you just keep doing heavier and harder, and you You do all your reps, you're going to get stronger. Yeah, that's going to get you stronger, but you're going to hit a plateau. You're going to get injured at some point. Something's going to happen, right? Some people are really lucky and they get really far using that one tool.
Yeah.
But some people end up with those problems within the first month, right?
Yeah.
So it has to be different parts of the pie chart, and the pie chart is actually different for every person. There are maybe the same 6 pieces, maybe some people have 8 pieces, but you have to have the sleep. You have to reduce the stress. You have to be eating semi-decent, if not super decent. All of that comes into it. The exercise is there, the training's there, the prehab or the rehab or the preventative stuff also needs to be in there. And that's kind of where I'm going with my own education, but also the education for my clients, is that I know there's all these pieces, but I'm not a specialist in each of those. So what am I going to do? I am going to get some information, some really solid evidence-based stuff. I'll read some articles, I'll be reading some books, I'll add my own experience in there to help my clients, because I saw it with myself and I see it with my clients, that when you're missing part of those pieces and you're not taking care of each of those pieces, something's going to drop. Right? Juggling, you can use the pie chart, you can use the tool analogy. Like, if you think you're going to get to where you're going by just using a hammer,
Everything's a name.
Yeah, we use that one all the time, which is why I brought it up, but it doesn't work like that. You have to have a whole tool set because you're going to need that one tool over there. And I see it with not only, the training clients, the strength, the conditioning, but also my injured clients. And it's really interesting. I do the assessment. Yeah, we figure what's going on. And then, maybe it's ice and Advil. Maybe it's taking a break from whatever you're doing or modifying. I like the word modifying because it's not my job to take people out of activity. It's to modify it so it's good for them.
Yeah.
But we also have to talk about sleep, right? We also have to talk about stress. And maybe that might be lifestyle stress, right? Figuring out what those pieces are in their life, but it could be physical stress too. That's why I love doing the craniosacral therapy, is because I can actually work with the nervous system, because we both know, and I hope a lot of people know, that when we're stressed, no matter what type of stress, is that our nervous system is heightened, right? And that comes from way back prehistoric ages with humans, where we had to be super alert to be looking for the dangers all the time.
Yeah.
And so, whether it was like a saber-tooth tiger, like, those things, we needed to know when there was a danger and when we were safe. These days, because we're so stressed with work, with family, with whatever the stress is, our nervous systems are so heightened. And then we wonder why, we can't lose weight, or we're super inflamed, and now our injuries feel way worse. And I know when I'm stressed, all I want to eat is carbs, and that increases the inflammation and the stress on the system, and then we gain weight, and then we feel bad, and then we're more stressed, and it ends up this vicious cycle. Oh yeah, big time. And so my goal going forward is, I have the assessment and the injury stuff, but I want to learn how to teach people more about the rest of their lives. You can call it lifestyle coaching, but to me it's investigation and trying to find all the puzzle pieces. I use the puzzle analogy with most people now because it's so accurate and so simple. Is if you have a simple injury or a simple problem, you open the box, you have all 10 pieces for your little puzzle, and boop, 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 done the puzzle, goal achieved, you're out of pain, you're doing what you want to do.
Yeah.
Not usually like that. Usually the puzzle is 50 pieces. I won't jump to like the 1,000 pieces. We need to make it like we need to make it actually true to life. So maybe the puzzle is 50 pieces, but you only have 35 pieces in the box.
And you don't know what the picture is.
And you don't know what the picture is. Half of them are the same color, so you have to work
Yeah.
really hard to put
Yeah.
them in the right place. And you have to find the other 15 pieces,
Yeah.
right? And that's why I use this analogy, because it's like, yeah, someone comes to me for an injury and it's like, boom, do my assessment, feel the tissues. I've got 35 of the pieces. Here's what we got to do. It's still going to take work, but we have to find those other pieces. And most of the time it's uncovering the layers. Once we put some of those puzzle pieces together, it's like, boop, here's 4 more pieces. And what that shows up as, oh, you released all this tension, but now I actually have this pain in my shoulder right here. It's
Yeah.
not that we caused it.
Yeah.
It was underneath the protection of all those tight muscles. Your body figured out a way to keep you out of that pain. It's not that the problem wasn't there. It was under the layer that we just solved.
Yeah.
Right? It's like, man, I love analogies and they just work so well. So the escape room, right? You got to get out of the room. You got to get out of pain. You got to build your strength. You got to hit that number. You got to do X, Y, Z. You solve one clue and, oh, now you get led to the next clue.
Yep.
Oh, and now you get led to the next one. Oh, now you solve 3. It's the way life works. It's the way injuries work. And so I'm really headed down that realm in helping the person with all the puzzle pieces.
Yeah, makes sense. I get it.
Okay, cool. I'm like, sometimes things make really good sense when I say them, and sometimes
Well, I think anyone that's had any kind of like, say, maybe not necessarily a chronic injury, one of those nagging injuries that just keep popping up. I think they can understand that, because how many times have you been like run into a situation where like someone's like, "Oh, my shoulder's killing me," and you start addressing the shoulder, you realize it's not the shoulder. You go to the neck, keep going into the neck, it's not the neck. You start going down the spine, and all of a sudden it's their left hip.
Yeah.
And that
Yeah.
and that to me is like, it's almost like a roadmap. I remember working with clients. I specifically one client, she had a right knee injury, and we started addressing that. We went to the hamstring, then we went to the hip, then we were in the low back, then we went up to, that was on her right side, then we went to her left shoulder, then to her right shoulder, back down the back of the spine into the left hamstring. I can't remember if it was the left hamstring into the left knee. And we've solved that. We've literally chased it around for almost a year, year and a half. And then we get to that left knee, and that was such a struggle to get through. And we couldn't figure out why. She goes, "My knee was never bugging me like for years." And then after probably like 2, 3 months of working on it, and this is modifying her workouts and working around it, she came and she goes, "I know what's going on." I was like, "What?" She goes, "When I was 7, I fell off my bike and twisted my knee." And that was 30 some years ago. So we chased 30 years of injuries and got to her knee. But once we solved that, all her lifts went through the roof and everything got easier for her. But it was a year and a half of just
I was, if you didn't mention it, I was going to ask you, how long did it take for you guys to get through that roadmap? Sometimes, again, things are built up over years,
yeah.
and then something pops up. And so what I get from clients, and I know you do too, is they come in and they're like, "I injured my knee yesterday." Like,
You injured yourself
okay,
months ago. It just showed up today.
skipped ahead of my story, Barrett. But that's it, right? It pops up and you think it's an acute problem. Oh, I must have twisted it doing something yesterday because the pain just started. And then it gets into my debate, and I keep saying I'm going to write an article about it, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. Because my question is without a trauma, is there really such thing as an acute injury?
Oh yeah, I'd say so.
Right? Because like, yeah, if there's a mechanism, yeah, I twisted my knee, I tore a ligament.
Yeah.
If you have a mechanism, you in a car crash, obviously you're going to have a bunch of acute injuries. And for those who don't know, an acute injury is something with a sudden onset and a mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
Something caused
X. Yeah.
X. There is a causation and it comes on right away. That's an acute injury. A chronic one builds up over time. and lasts a long time, more than 6 weeks, or it's recurrent. Something keeps happening.
Yeah.
So my question is that thing, oh, the right knee hurts. That wasn't an acute injury, right?
Yeah.
It was an acute presentation. Oh, it started right away, but the cause wasn't something you did to the right knee. It was exactly that. Happened to the left knee when I was 7, and then the body compensated around it for years and built up all these things to keep our body balanced
Yeah.
and
How
out of
messed
pain.
up is that when you think about that?
And it's like even my example of recurrent ankle sprains. I used to roll my ankles once a month,
Mm,
right? And yes, ankle sprains, you flop over on the side, it's an acute injury, it swells up, but it was so recurrent for me that it becomes a chronic issue. It's called chronic ankle instability. It's not just one sprained ankle, it's
yeah.
over and over and over again. And that is a chronic cause. There's no stability. And then the system doesn't know how to react to it, so it overreacts. I could just step on the outside of my foot and my body would, ah,
Yeah.
and it would go right over. It's like my ankle should not have done that. There should have been no acute injury. It was actually a chronic cause. So I get into that whole thing of how many things are actually contributing to your injury.
Yeah. It's like I like to refer to it as like a Jenga set where you
Yeah.
have everything stacked up and you just take one thing and put it on top and slowly just keep stacking it up and all of a sudden it falls over.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
body can compensate and deal with things until it can't.
Yeah.
That Jenga set will stay balanced until it can't.
Yeah. And people like and not just rehab, even like strength athletes or actually athletes, like, why can't I squat more?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we've gotten as far as you can go in your current lifestyle. Like, you want to squat more, it's going to take more recoverability. You have to get under a heavier bar and way less stress. Maybe you have to change your nutrition. There's so many factors you have to adjust to get to maybe squatting more that's not just related to being under a bigger barbell. Yeah, that's probably it. But if you're sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night and your nutrition is hell, I promise you, if you address those, you'll get better results faster before me putting another 5 or 10 pounds on that bar. And it's just that simple. It's just the body can't take anymore. This is the top limit that you're giving it right now. And it cannot do anymore unless you have one of those super CNS days where you feel really good and you're going to have another 2 to 3 months of just like feeling like dog shit. But if you just say, I'm going to have to sleep 8 hours a night, while my lifestyle doesn't allow me to do that, then you have to adjust your lifestyle, or we have to adjust something else. Something has to give to go farther. And that's what I tell people, like me, for example, May, I haven't put a barbell on my back since May. Yesterday was the first time I put a barbell on my back since May. And I've been powerlifting uh, pretty much in one form or another for almost 36 months. And then all of a sudden, in the last 4 months of my block before the season ended in October last year, things were just annoying. My low back was pissing me off. My ribs were pissing me off. My shoulders pissed me off. And I couldn't really compete. Everything was beat to hell. So I took like probably like a few weeks off and I squatted lighter. And then finally we get into like May and I put a barbell on my back and 225 felt like 600 pounds. And I just put it back up and I was like, it's over. I've been doing this for I've been in a gym for more than half of my life, like 24 or 5 years now. So I can tell you when my body at this point says, if you put one more pound on you, that's it. The party's over. My low back was just smoked. No matter how I pulled, it could be sumo or conventional, didn't matter. My low back was saying you're done. So I had to step away. And yesterday, what's today? Yesterday was the first day I put a barbell on my back, and I squatted 200 pounds for 5 sets of 5, and it was light. It didn't feel heavy, and it didn't hurt me. But I could have probably went to 385 or 300 easy for 2 to 3 reps, no problem. But I haven't squatted in 8 months, so jumping up to like 300 pounds isn't a lot. It's like 70-75%. But I hadn't done it in 8 months. I had to build the base back up, and it'll come back quick, but it felt good. It didn't hurt. I'm tight. It wasn't great. I was tight, but your body needs a break sometimes. You got to change. And I keep telling people that for long-term development, in my opinion, you have to determine what you want to do. And it could be anything from, I'm worried about the meet a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now. That's what I'm worried about, the short-term meets. But my goal is to do a meet when I'm 80. But if I have 2 blown out knees, 2 blown out hips, 2 blown out shoulders, 2 blown out elbows, probably not going to be able to do a meet at 80 years old. So I have to step back and do completely everything but a heavy squat, bench, and dead. I got to build my foundation up. I got to get my GPP base back up. I have to build every other area of my loads and my hips and my torso and my trunk back up before I can get to that goal of doing a meet when I'm 80. Because to me, that's the end game. Like, I'm not going to break records anytime soon, but if I live to 80, I'm probably going to get a barbell on my back. I'm probably going to break a record just because I survived that long.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point for people that do have some of those long-term goals, or they've been injured and can't get to their goals. Is you're willing to step back from what you want to do. Like, you want to lift heavy, but you can't do that continually. You have to work on your weak links. And I like to tell that to people, you will always have a weak link.
Oh,
I
yeah.
don't care if you are the strongest person in the world, Eddie Hall, one of those people. You have a weak link that is keeping you from getting stronger or from getting out of pain. And that's why I love training with you, is because we were always working on those weak links no matter what they were, right? By the time that I could deadlift over 300 pounds, it was amazing. But
Yeah.
there was something always stopping me from going heavier. And sometimes that was my low back. Sometimes that was my glutes and hamstrings, just strength wise. But a lot of times it was neurological.
Mhm.
I remember on those on days where the nervous system is just like, I can do anything. My grip on those awesome days was probably strong enough to do 400 pounds,
Mhm.
but the strength of my hips was not.
Mhm.
There was also other days where I was so neurologically fried. I slept like crap. I was stressed. I was eating like crap. And my hands couldn't hold 135 pounds. And that could be a couple days apart.
Oh, it could be the next day.
And people are like, how? How? I was like, that pie chart,
Mhm.
right? On that on day, my pie chart was just like, I had everything going for me, right? And then 2 days later, couldn't touch 135-pound barbell because my stress was outside of that
Mhm.
pie chart, and I wasn't sleeping and ate like crap. Like, it just wasn't there. And I just love thinking about that weakest link. Like, what is the weakest link? What is holding me back? What is the biggest thing holding me back? Because it can always change. You never know, right? Like, if you look at actual chains of metal,
Yeah.
one of them is the weak link,
Oh, yeah. And they all
right?
look exactly the same.
They all look exactly the same. It's rated for 1,000 pounds. So let's put 1,000 pounds of pull on either side of that chain. It could be the one that's attached to whatever's pulling, or it could be one of the ones in the middle. You never know what it's going to be until you test it.
Yep.
And that's what happens with our bodies, whether you're trying to test it the best you can by doing, max strength testing, 1RM testing to see how strong you are, right? I could do, let's say the one day I could do 300 pounds, felt great, nothing in my body was off, go up to 305, and my low back's like, nope. Well, guess what? My low back was the weak link.
Mhm.
And so then you strengthen that, you work around it, and then you get up to 310. And maybe it was just like, oh, it wasn't activating as much. So I did a couple activation drills, went back and did it that same day. Or it might mean that I had to strengthen that whatever for a 4-week block.
Yeah.
You just don't know until you try it. And in everyday life, even people who don't work out and train and do sports and stuff, you're testing your body, right?
Yeah.
Let's say, you like watching TV, You're laying on the couch, you're doing absolutely fine. You're not tasking your body. Let's say you just roll over to grab the remote and your back decides to cramp and strain.
Yep.
Unknowingly, you just tested the length of that muscle and you tested it too much, and it and it didn't like it. And so it cramped up like that, right? It's not a cramp for no reason. It's that you overstretched it and the body's like, whoa, not cool.
Yeah.
And that could be someone who doesn't exercise doing that. And the reason I use that example is, we know, I'm pointing to my couch for those who don't know. You could be just laying on the couch not doing anything for weeks, like in COVID, watching the Netflix and eating the snacks, and you reach and you strain your back because it was tight, it was not strong enough, whatever. It could also be an NHL athlete in season. They are strong, they are fast, they are healthy, they are on. They could reach over, pick up that remote, and blow a disc.
Yeah.
Okay, was reaching for that remote really what burst that disc?
Not even close. We all know.
No, there's already something going on, but their body was able to deal with it. And something so simple as reaching for the remote was the straw that broke the camel's back.
Yeah.
Okay, but that wasn't the actual injury. It was the chronic lead up to that point. And I say that story because I read about an NHL athlete that happened to years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember the name for the life of me, but I just remember reading that story and I was like, holy crap. That is exactly what we're talking about when we say that it doesn't necessarily, that reach, that small twist to the knee isn't what fully caused that injury. There was something going on way before that.
Yeah. It's always interesting to see it happen. It's never fun, but it's always interesting.
No, I never wish it on anyone, but when we're given information, we need all that information to create the actual story, because that's the only way you're going to fix whatever's going on, heal that injury, get out of pain, but also stop it from recurring in the future.
Yeah, and that's generally when I do my assessment. Like my favorite way to assess, I don't want to say anywhere from like an intermediate power lifter and up, is to actually watch their movement under a heavy load.
Okay.
And I really don't, we generally don't get to max, but we get to a fairly decent load, and it's usually anything above 75, 80%, and I'll start to see imbalances start to pop up. I'll start to see a breakdown in pattern and load. And I think that's the best way to assess a power lifter, to be honest, because I can do all the functional movement screens I want. I can do all the basic assessments. And I've learned that the higher the level the athlete and they understand what I'm trying to look for, the better they can cheat it. But you can't cheat 90%. But that's the thing. Like, I'm looking for a weak area that pops up. It could be a dip in the bar going forward. I could have on the bench, I could see some shoulder wing, some shoulders through there. Like, you'll start to see those things pop up, and that's what you have to address first thing. And I think that is like one of the bigger things that a lot of people miss, is that they'll do all these like screening tests. But if you've got a high level athlete and they've done a screening test several times, they know how to cheat it. They're really good. And even a lot of general population people, once they figure out what I'm looking for, they can cheat it. I don't want them to cheat it. I want to see what I got to see. So I know you can't cheat a heavy load. And that's why I keep telling people that the movement is the assessment and the assessment is the movement. Like, I got that from, you might remember Jeff Aker.
Yep.
I got that from Jeff years ago, and it was one of the most intelligent things I've heard when it comes to our field. Just because I'm doing an assessment on you doesn't mean that every day you walk in and we're doing a training program, I'm not assessing every single thing you do. That's how I changed a lot of those programs for people literally off the cuff, where I'm watching you lift one day and you're pulling off the floor and it's just hell on earth pulling off the floor. I know next week you're probably pulling in a deficit. Why? Because you're going to lift a lighter load, but work in a longer range, and it won't be as hard coming off the floor in 3-4 months.
Yeah.
So I think those are lost skills.
And sometimes you do those assessments under weight, but again, for general population who's not doing those things, I look at their movement without weight. And sometimes I add a little bit of resistance, but again, I'm not telling them what I'm looking for, because they might try to stop it. So even if I'm doing a shoulder assessment, I ask the person to raise their arm, I'm just doing a body weight. And I'm like, that actually looks pretty smooth. That's interesting for the problem you're telling me about your shoulder. The second I put resistance again at stitch and they use their upper trap,
Yep.
I'm like, oh, there it is.
Yeah.
You can move smooth, but the second I add even a little bit of resistance, your body's like, oh, no, delt can't do that. I'm going to use the trap. That's exactly what the problem is.
Yeah.
Right? The muscle's trying to do the work of the other ones, and it shouldn't be doing it, and it's getting mad, right? Tight, it's getting mad, getting overworked. I mean, any of us who are overworked, we know how we get. We get really crabby and angry. Muscles do the same thing. So it can be just a simple movement assessment like that, or it can be all the way up to loaded with weight. It all gives you information.
Yeah, and it's really important to understand understand how to interpret that information, I think.
Yeah, you have to know what you're looking at, right? I remember 7 years ago, right out of school, at the gym, being asked to look at a squat. And I look at it and they're like, okay, what do you see? I'm like,
A squat.
you see that one knee goes out further than the other, and the person's heels lifted. They're like, okay, what else did you see? I'm like, I don't know. They're like, okay, well, let's go back to those two things. What do you think caused it? I'm like, I don't know. Okay. Fast forward 4 years, I was then teaching the movement assessment course, and I could watch one or two squats and be like, bing, 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 and that's what's causing it.
Mhm.
So yes, you have to be able to see it and know what you're looking for based on the ideal movement pattern for that person.
Yep.
Because movement patterns aren't global.
No.
Based on a whole bunch of things that we don't have to get into, but you have to know what would be good movement for that person, the problems that you see, but then also interpret what might be contributing to those problems, those movement errors, so that you can actually address them to help the person. Because it helps no one if you say, oh, your right knee's caving in.
So
How do we work on, and why is that bad? Right? You have to be able to know where to go from the information you get.
Yeah, and I think that's why I have such a hard time, and this is going off on a little tangent. Like you see those like fitness influencers online saying that take my program, I'll get you cut like me, blah blah blah. I guarantee that if you don't have any on floor experience working with people, I'll put money on it, dollars to donuts any day of the week, that you will not be able to assess an individual on a screen nearly as well as you would right on the floor. And I'll put money on that all day of the week, unless you've got a decade of experience behind you. Like working with online clients for me, I've watched a barbell move and I've only seen one angle, but the only reason why I know what the barbell is doing and what's going on is because I've seen 1,000 barbells from that angle and 15 other angles, and I can almost do like the NFL 3D shot in my head as someone's running down the field by just the sheer experience of seeing that so many times. And I think that people like jump online too fast in our world and try to sell programs and like make $1 million fast, and they skip a very, very important coaching part, and that's getting your coach's eye.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That is just so accurate. It's not even funny, because yeah, we know that we can look at something from a video. I've done a few virtual sessions with my athletic therapy clients, and I'll be teaching them even a mobility drill, a stretch, let's call it. And I watch them, I get them to play their camera so I can watch them doing it. And it's one angle. And I see them move and I'm like, ooh, that's tight. I'm going to give you another stretch for that too. And the person looks at me, they're like, did you even see me? Like, how did you know that? I was like, I do. I just did. I can tell you. Or my clients, even in the gym, even more so through video, or like, how did you know I was doing that? How did you know I was feeling that? How do you keep making that harder? Like, I'm just like, I just over time got good at it. And now it's just so easy. But even if something doesn't come easy to us with one glance, guess what? When you're in the gym in front of someone, you can look from the side. Or I can stop someone through video and be like, hey, can you actually turn to your right 90 degrees so that I can see, because I think I see something. And then it is exactly what I thought it was going to be. But then you know to turn them as well. And so yeah, people without the experience going to virtual stuff, you're still helping people, right? But also realize the drawbacks.
There's a lot of limitations to not having that coach's eye, I think.
Yeah. So there's that piece, but just for those who end up watching this, you also made an assumption that whoever's doing that online training is watching the client.
Yeah.
Spending the time to either watch video that's sent to them or are doing a one-on-one session like we're doing just for the talk, but you could do virtual training through video. You're assuming that they're being looked at.
Yeah.
Right? But a lot of people are buying online programs and then just doing it on their own, which again, you can get a lot of value, but you don't know if you're doing it right or not. And even my clients that I build an individualized program, I have always, right from the start up until now, had problems with here's your program, go do it. These are the right exercises for you. And I know they're the right exercises for them right now and they need to work on it.
But that could change in 2 weeks.
I am so watching their form and what muscles they're using in those exercises. And you don't get that unless someone's watching you. And again, 90% of the time that might be great for that person, but there's also those people, it's like, ooh, you're using the wrong muscle for that exercise. You're actually doing the opposite of what the exercise is for.
Yeah.
Right? The two ones that really come to mind are a seated row.
Oh yeah.
And side lying leg raises, the Jane Fondas, right? So you're doing a seated row. Sorry, I get my hair out of the way. And you come up like that. You're using the exact wrong muscle. The exact one we're trying to get shut off. We want to go into the mid back. Same thing with the Jane Fondas. If you do it at the wrong angle, you're getting the hip flexor and the TFL, the tensor fasciae lata, to do the work instead of the glute. Those are the exact muscles we want to shut off. Right? And you only know by looking at the person. And so I even have a tough time handing over proper exercises for the person, let alone a random generalized program.
Yeah. And that's the thing I have a hard time with. Like, there's a funny meme I laugh at every time I see it because it comes up in some form probably once or twice a month in my feed. It's always like you and your friend get a customized program from this fitness influencer online coach, and it goes, and then you and your friend realize it's the exact same program. It's like, ugh, god damn it, I hate that.
And for anyone who's watching this who doesn't exercise regularly, just in case someone ends up on this video, please, I hope everyone becomes active in some point or another. If what gets you off the couch doing some exercise is getting that program and the motivation from watching the videos of that person and emulating them, exercising is better than no exercising.
Absolutely.
But if you're getting pain, if you're injured, if you're not getting to your goals, please know that's what we're talking about. In the fact that it might not be the right exercises for you at this time, or you might have some kind of movement, something or other that's creating a problem and causing your pain. So I'll put that little caveat in there to give some context.
Yeah, I think that's actually a good way to end that little segment.
Yeah. On a professional note.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I knew, like, when we started this, like, oh, what do you want to talk about? I was like, we just kind of go. Like, I knew it was going to go somewhere. I just didn't know where I was going to go.
Yeah, well, even think back to when I was doing the powerlifting and you were coaching as we do the workout. And then sometimes we end up sitting there for 2 hours afterwards and just chatting about training and learning and stuff. So
yeah,
you always know we'll end up on some topic.
Speaking of books, what are you reading right now? And you knew I was going to ask you that one.
Always. What am I reading right now? Okay, well, I just finished The Obstacle is the Way.
Oh, I got that book on my list on Amazon. How is it?
I really liked it. So it is about Stoicism,
Mhm.
which is philosophy from way back when, but he does a super good job explaining how, we need resilience to obstacles. Nothing's ever going to be easy the whole way through.
Mhm.
And if it is, there's probably something wrong and you're not seeing it, or you got really lucky and you're going to get an obstacle later down the road.
Mhm.
So, there's different ways to look at obstacles that could force you to do something different and pivot, like the pandemic has done for those of us who previously relied on seeing our clients one-on-one in person and not having any of the shutdowns, any of the 6-foot rules and stuff like that has really changed the way we've had to do our business. Now, some people just be like, well, I'm not going to change. I'm not going to do anything different. Oops, looks like I'm not going to work. To, okay, as much as this sucks, I'm going to take this as a growth opportunity. I'm going to learn something new and I'm going to do whatever it takes to help people. It might not be ideal, but we're going to do it. And it really separated people. And that's what he kind of talks about in the book. And he brings in those Stoic philosophies from way back when, brings it to new problems, but also gives examples of like things that Benjamin Franklin did, or Roosevelt, Rockefeller, all those things. Like we see them as these big, super successful people, but you don't hear about how long they worked at something before they got to where they were,
Yeah.
right? Or how poor they were, and that it wasn't like they magically got millions of dollars. They made it happen step by step.
Yeah. It's the classic line. It took you 10 years to become an overnight success.
I didn't actually understand that. I knew it theoretically, and that's the thing with reading and being able to, again, just like we said, interpreting the things you find in a movement assessment. I have read hundreds of books.
Oh, yeah.
There's a difference between reading it to actually putting some of that into action
Mhm.
and being able to interpret what information you need and pull it out of the book
Mhm.
and then use it. So I'm super grateful that I built up that skill over time and that I like reading. But yeah, and the nice thing is, even if people don't think they like philosophy or don't think they like reading full books, this one is laid out super easy. It's like 6-page chapters, and it's almost like just reading like a little article on one small topic. But by the time you finish all of it,
Mhm.
you now have the whole picture. So yeah, I'd recommend that one. I then started looking at my books. What did I start?
I know I'm the same way.
I started a book about migraines, but I couldn't get into it. And then I think I might have to pick a new book. I still need to read Anatomy Trains.
Oh, God. Yeah. I've started that book 3 times and I haven't had a chance to get through it because something else always pops up. I really want to read it. It's a really great book, but it's just
Yeah, yeah. My problem was the first 2 chapters, so I think I might skip to chapter 3 and then make my way my way through. For people who have read this book, you know that the first chapter is very dense and very,
dry.
very dry. And that
Yeah.
once you start actually learning about the fascial chains and how they work together and what parts of the body are attached, and then how to go from there gets way more interesting. So I'll do that. But what I'm actually planning on doing is each book that I read, I'll be writing articles about it. It might be an article straight on, what I found really fascinating about the book. But what my bigger thing is to take little points out of them and relate them to injuries, to rehabilitation, to fitness, to life. As I talked about it being in that full pie chart of the sleep, the stress, the nutrition, the everything. So I'm really excited to start doing that. So my next one is actually to take those bits that I loved of The Obstacle Is the Way, and
Mhm.
start writing articles to relate those concepts to what would help my clients the best.
Oh, that's awesome. That's a good idea.
Probably why I haven't picked another book, and why I'm like, for some reason, having a brain fart on what I'm reading, is probably because on my to-do list is to start writing articles about that book.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I'm so many books, so little time.
Yeah, I'm reading a fiction book, Watership Down, which is also quite good. But I mean, that doesn't really pertain to what we're talking about. So
I think it does. I think you have to brain candy and reset.
yeah.
I've always got one fiction book on the go. It just depends on what fiction book I'm reading. Like, I think oddly enough, I'm reading a prequel to the Hunger Games.
Oh, that's on my list. Yeah.
Songbirds and Snakes or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's actually pretty good. I mean, it's literally one of those teen friggin' books, but it's actually just straight brain candy. And I really enjoyed the Hunger Games books. Like, they were really good. And I think they were better in the movie, to be honest. But
Yes. Yeah. The movie's good. They did a good job.
yeah. Definitely an interesting take on what they did.
Yeah. Fiction wise, I read everything from classics because I feel like they're classics for a reason, and there's something you should learn from them,
I'm
even though
getting
they're
more into the
fiction.
classics as well.
So I try to like read some simple stuff. I read every night before bed, so I have to be careful what I read. But I read everything from teen fiction to mystery crime books to classics. But I can't read too many classics in a row because my brain just like
Yeah.
brain does that. But as for nonfiction, yeah, anatomy trains, because I'd also like to write some articles about fascia, because I won't get into it, but fascia is just such a big part of the way that our bodies move, but also a lot of problems that we end up with, which is why I do so much fascial work on my clients, trying to balance things out, these restrictions that are stopping them from getting the movement they need to actually activate the muscles they need to be healthy. But I'm also going to be learning on the nerd side the relationship between the nervous system and fascia, and stress and nutrition, and how they all go really back and forth. So on the professional front, that's what I'm going to be looking into. It could be like neuroscience mixed with movement, mixed with fascia. I'm really excited to kind of go into depth myself on that, because I love learning the connections between things, because it's also what I'm running into with clients is like, some people, I release the fascia, get them all balanced out. Great. That's what we needed to work on. Sometimes I release the fascia, I get them drinking a little bit more water, taking some anti-inflammatories, and it's good for a bit, but all of it comes back.
Yeah.
All of it comes back, and then you got to figure out why. And a lot of that has to do with the neurological system, A, trying to protect the person, or B, bringing those patterns back because it thinks it's protecting them.
Mm-hmm.
And C, also on the stress but emotional front.
Yeah.
Stress and emotions will often be a big part of that. So on the professional realm too, I'm also learning more about emotions and how they may become trapped in the body, or how our emotional states actually affect our physical bodies, and vice versa.
Oh, wow. That's a topic I want to talk about the next time for sure.
I know, which so I've read a book called The Emotion Code. And in my craniosacral education and learning, we also talk about stuff like that. But now that that door has opened for me, I'm like, where are the rest of these pieces and how do I put it all together?
Mm-hmm.
So that's like forthcoming in my business ventures and my writing as well, to kind of bring it to the masses of the people that it really pertains to and will really help. So I want to relate it to them in a simple way without them having to go do all this research like me.
Yeah, leave it to the nerds. I'm the same boat.
Yeah, let me do all the reading and stuff because I like it anyways. But yeah, that's why I want to like read a book and then write some articles and create discussions that way, and and maybe teach people something they haven't heard, or teach it in a way or relate it in a way they haven't heard and hasn't really like hit them. Because you know, we read articles and books and stuff, and we just hit a sentence that the person's written, like, oh, I've never thought about it that way, or oh, I need to send that to this person, because that's exactly what we've been missing in our approach to their issues. So yeah, I'm really excited to do all those things and to get more on the social media front, but not be a social media person, but use it to use my writing skills and to help more people that aren't able to see me in person, both because of the pandemic or they're not in Calgary. So I once us therapists are allowed to work again, hopefully in January. I mean, I do my mobile business here in Calgary, but my plan being mobile is actually so I can go to like the places outside Calgary, or to go wherever my family is, right? That was, I learned during the pandemic, is how important it is to really cultivate that family time. And my family right now lives 9 hours away. So my plan is, yeah, I'll see obviously my clientele here, but then when I'm going up north to see my family, I can stop in Red Deer. I can stop in Edmonton. I can stop and see clients along the way. Why not, right? I want to travel and see my family, and that way I can actually help people who don't live right in Calgary. I can help my friends, family, and people in my hometown of Fairview. And if my family moves, then hey, whenever I go spend time with them, I can also see clients there. And yeah, so you know, I'll do the mobile business. I'll do my posts and articles on Facebook and Instagram. And right now I'm writing on the site medium.com.
Okay.
And then, you know, my goal with all my self-learning and everything is to also develop a PDF series and some ebooks in the future. I would love to say that I have them done right now, but for anyone who has written things, they do take a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of prepping to make sure you put something out that will help people and that is worth taking a look at. So I'm really excited to become a writer and do those things. So yeah, I hope to put out little guides to injuries or guides to different parts of the body. Like one will be ankle and foot. So teach people about the ankle and foot, teach them about all the common injuries, and globally what leads to those and what problems end up causing a lot of those, and provide really good tips and exercises that would be safe for anyone to do for those things. But also tell people, like, you know, we may not know the causes or what's contributing to this. So if you have this problem, you need to see someone. Versus if the bottom of your foot just feels tight, now we need to release the plantar fascia. So we're going to roll it out. I'm going to teach you the calf stretches. But if you continue to have problems after doing these two very safe things, please get it assessed. So providing information to people, but staying safe at the same time, and letting people know when they can do things on their own and probably when they should see someone, because that's the hardest part is, oh, can I just stretch this out, or do I need more help? So I plan to go through the whole body, and then I hope to do some collaborations with some people on maybe like, you know, strength-based ebook, maybe nutrition-based ebook.
We might know some people.
to help my clients out. So it's really nice to feel inspired and excited about doing these things, and bringing together all of my interests. That was one of my biggest goals with doing my own business and making this huge change in a very unstable year. Mm-hmm. Some would say it's the worst time to start a business. Some would say it's the best time, depending on what you do. But for me, it was absolutely the right time, because yeah, I will always want to help assess injuries and treat my clients, but I also want to be a writer, and I also want more time and brain space to read books.
Yeah.
And bring that together. So why not, you know, match my profession with my love of reading, but then use that reading to help both my therapy clients and in whatever writing endeavors I end up in. So super excited to see things come together.
That's sweet.
Yeah.
So where can everyone find you now with these PDFs and social media presence and such?
Yeah, so I have multiple places. So the easiest place to get a hold of me and find all of these things, if you only remember one thing, is I do have a website. So it's www.cvbwellness.com.
Yeah.
CVB as in Courtney Van Beers. So cvbwellness.com. Everything will be through there, but I also have Facebook, CVB Wellness Services. I have Instagram, CVB Wellness Services.
That's perfect.
I have LinkedIn. LinkedIn is Courtney Van Beers, but it'll say owner of CVB Wellness Services. Easy both for myself and for anyone that was looking for me. And my articles, you know, I'm gonna have to figure out kind of where the easiest thing is, but I'll always put links to them in my posts in social media. My page on Medium is Courtney Van Beers. The really neat thing about Medium is that you can read free articles. I think they allow you somewhere between 3 and 5 free articles per month to read, but it's actually a membership-based site. So, I mean, I pay about $5 per month and I can read unlimited stuff. And it's not so much that I'm paying to read all these things, which is the obvious perk, but that $5 actually helps support all the writers. So anyone who's also looking to become a writer can write on there. And when people read your articles, it ends up, you know, helping the writer out. But I'll also put my articles on my website, links to them. So some of them will be through the Medium site. Some of them I'll actually have just written on my website. So I don't have a resources tab yet because it's in the works. So all my videos, all my articles, all my PDFs will be through there.
Sweet, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Courts, it was awesome talking to you as always. I say that's pretty good. Hope you guys enjoyed this one. I'll end it now, but Courts, stick around for 2 seconds.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.